there's been a prediction from the World Bank that our poverty rate is going to increase to about by about 3.6%. In other words, between now and 2027, we're going to have more poor people in Nigeria. It's a very worrisome trend. And people are asking what the reform that we started was to indeed have a positive impact on the lives of the people. Of course, the IMF itself is one of those who did, supported the government during that reforms in the early days of this administration. But they are, in a way, turning back now to begin to criticize the reform and, of course, the impact that it's having on the citizen. Before we go to Muktar, who will be joining me shortly, let's take this track up. More like a reaction to IMF criticism.
This government was playing the IMF script, but I found out later on that the IMF came out with a statement recently that the government was not happy about. Even though the statement was not an outright condemnation, it stated that the policies are yet to benefit Nigerians. Maybe it's a statement that has hope in it. I'm beginning to get confused. I thought they got this advice from IMF. Why is the IMF saying otherwise? And could it be that the IMF is what people have suspected them to be all this while? They send you up and then cut the tree beneath your foot? So we don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is. CEO Finance with Muktar Mohammed joins me now virtually from Lagos. Good morning, Muktar.
Yeah, good morning, and Yusuf. Always a pleasure to be on your program. Thank you for having me today.
Always a pleasure having you. Always. You listening to that track up there, reacting to IMF projection. Is IMF in a way giving us false hope initially, and of course at the end of the day, turning around to criticize the same reform that they also praise?
I think sometimes we are very emotional about everything that happens to us. And we don't look at the report critically and look at what the IMF is saying. And in as much as the IMF is said, what the IMF have done is to praise these reforms and saying that the reforms have the wherewithal to change the trajectory of the Nigeria economy. But again, the IMF is also saying that even with this thing, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of some area, especially the non-oil sector, so that it can bring in more value to the average Nigerian. I think that's what the IMF is saying. It's not that it's saying that these reforms is has not come up with the desired result. It's a reform definitely takes a lot of time to you start seeing the results. And one of those quick results we've seen in this reform is the coming down of PMS. And again, that is a gradual process. And again, helped by the international crude price, which also seems to be positive for the local economy, but is negative in the long run for the larger economy because of the effects that we are not able to get into the economy. So I don't think the IMF is outrightly criticizing the economy. I think he's just saying that there's still a lot of work to be done.
Indeed, there is still a lot of work to be done. But when an international donor agency like that, let's say like the World Bank now, come out to say that, look, by 2027, there's going to be more people, more poor people in Nigeria. According to them, about 560 million population are really poor. And of course, half of that are in 4 countries, including Nigeria. Aren't you worried when that kind of statistics is coming at the time when the country is, embarking on a massive reform to reposition the country? Hey, Muktar, are you there? Okay, we hope we get Muktar back to react.
The World Bank also praised.
Okay. Go ahead, Muktar.
Okay, if you look at that report critically from the World Bank also praised Nigerian reform. And they also said that the way it is, we need to do more diversification to the non-oil sector rather than depending solely on the oil sector. And in that report also, the World Bank was saying that if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, most of the countries that have crude oil, especially natural resources, seems to suffer more in terms of poverty than those that do not have natural resources. And what the IMF is saying in that report is, the World Bank is saying in that report is, when you look at the report, that means the critical sector that you need to address to get the kind of results that would drive a lot of Nigerians or sub-Saharan Africans out of the.
Okay, we're still having some network challenges there. We hope to get Muktar back to continue along his thoughts there. Quite a whole lot of issues there in that report by IMF. According to them, they are encouraging economic diversification, which is what Nigeria has indeed been trying to do for a very long time. They've been so promising of industrial. Okay, Oga Muktar, if you're back, continue along your thoughts.
Okay, I said, like you just said, it's promising a lot of non-oil economic reform. I mean, because again, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa and you look at Nigeria, we have over 75% of our population in the rural area. And what he's saying is that if you really want to drive a lot of Nigerians out of the poverty level, you must look at what affects the large numbers of Nigeria and which are that sector that can provide job for them that will take them out of that poverty level. That is what the IMF is saying. It's talking about concentrating on the sector that will build more wealth for your people and take them out of poverty level. Because the three critical essential needs of the people in terms of economic needs is clothing, housing, and food. And when you look at those three critical needs, people definitely are challenging. People are not even talking about clothing these days. People are not even talking about housing any longer, especially if you're in an urban area. You're not thinking of buying more. Getting your own house again because the price has actually gone up. But what you are looking at is looking at how you can put food on your table, both in the urban and the rural area. So that's what that report is actually telling Nigerians, that the Nigerian government should do more in the non-oil sector.
Indeed, doing more in the non-oil sector. Muktar, is this something that we are not aware about? We've been talking about, we have Nigeria, non-oil export arm of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council. What more are we doing in that regard? These are things that are there. Do we need IMF or World Bank to tell us what to do with regards to investment in the non-oil sector? We have quite a whole lot of mineral resources that are on tap in this country.
I think Yusuf, we don't need the IMF. And again, if you watch today, I think the Nigerian Export Promotion Council came out that we've seen a lot of Nigerians doing more imports out of the shore of this country than we normally have seen before. And this is due to the reform that was embarked upon by the previous CBN government management team, which also tried to streamline these processes of export rather than having going through those compulsive processes of export. I think we are beginning to do well, especially in exporting of our non-oil commodities. But we still have a lot to do. I think the major challenge with the non-oil sector as it stands now is funding and cost of production. Funding in itself, funding is very high, high interest rate because of our hawkish monetary policy. Then you talk about cost of production is high also because of high energy costs, transportation, infrastructure. All these are what are affecting us. So we are not able to compete favorable. So if you have so much of Nigerian product out of the shore of this country, they might not be able to compete favorable with their other opponents. So you see that a lot of Nigerians are more interested in leaving their product here. And again, we've not been able to develop a very strong storage facility, especially for agricultural product, whereby they can be produced all seasons and put in a storehouse for preservation, like what we used to have in the 90s and all that. So government were building silos everywhere. So there's still a lot of work to be done in the non-oil sector. And if you look at one sector that can drive growth in the non-oil sector, the solid mineral sector, it has, I think there's been a lot of talk there by the minister, Dele Alake, but we have not seen in terms of movement. We're having so much talk, but movement has not been commensurate with the talk. So we need a lot of movement there. We need investment there. If you export that, if you develop that sector, the solid mineral sectors, and you're looking at steel alone, that have an effect of changing the narrative, especially in the agricultural sector, because most of the machines that are needed to make this product into finished product are still being imported into this country. It's not that they cannot be fabricated here, but we don't have enough steel to do that. So once we improve on that, the Jakarta Steel Complex come in, then we have the non-oil sector also playing a role. You know, like your section carried some years ago, the main fueling of banditry in the north central northeast is as a result of solid minerals. So we need to improve security so that government can actually begin to get the right people to develop the solid minerals, and then we begin to export, and we also begin to use locally. That, for me, will change the narrative in our economics.
Indeed, that will change the narrative. But you talk about solid minerals, which indeed is also, some are even saying the revenue there is more bigger than what we're getting from the crude oil. But there's challenges, I mean, with regards to the insecurity where some of these minerals are located. What do you think should be done at this time? I understand the minister, Mr. Dele Alake, is doing quite a whole lot. Like you said, so much talk, but not the action is so limited. Do you think the insecurity in these areas is affecting the revenue we are getting from solid minerals?
Yusuf, you cannot detach that from it, definitely. Insecurity is really affecting the revenue in that sector. So we really need to look at improving security, because when you look at, like I said, what is foreign banditry, I think it's insecurity. So we need to look at that and also begin to improve security. And unfortunately, when I say fortunately, that is in the hands of the executive arm of government, which the minister itself belongs to. So they need to improve the security so that we begin to export our solid minerals, rather than letting crooks and cronies begin to invest this into their private hands. We've seen a lot of videos and we've seen a lot of social media where we see that this solid mineral is being exported by foreign nationals of a particular nation. But we have to do something about it by also improving security in some of these areas that these solid minerals are located.
Indeed, a lot needs to be done where these solid minerals are located with regard to security. Let's also look at how we can even develop the value chain of these solid minerals instead of taking the raw materials out of the country and bringing in the refined one. I mean, it's what we've been doing for a very long time. What right investment do you think we should attract? I mean, from partners like China, the US, and a couple of them, for them to come here, develop the value chain here instead of taking the raw material out of Nigeria and, of course, bringing the refined one?
Yes, the world is a global village, and you cannot be isolated from it. Everybody is thinking of maximizing profits, and that is why the foreign countries will always be happy to export your product and also import your raw material back. They are doing that because, I mean, US export your raw material and bring in the finished product. So most of them is not that they don't want to establish companies here in Nigeria. But the challenge is that some of these companies cannot be established here because, like I said, cost of production is very, very high. So you don't expect some of these companies to say, okay, look, we have to establish a plant here in Nigeria, we have to establish a plant here because when you look at this lack of infrastructure, there's no power, there's no power, basically. And so a lot of these companies, it makes more value for them to take it out and finish it. Even with that, bringing it in here, the cost is still lower. And remember, they are not only bringing it here, they are trying to export it to other globally competitive markets. And so they need a good pricing. So it's not about establishing companies. We've had a lot of companies wanting to establish branches in Nigeria. But when they look at the infrastructural challenges, they don't even in the service sector, that it should be easy for them to want to establish their companies here in Nigeria. They tell you that the infrastructure is lacking. That's a major challenge.
Indeed, you are blaming our inability now to refine our products here on the kind of business environment that we have. I mean, so unfriendly. You will say we have the Ministry of Trade and Investment. We have also the PBEC at the arm of the presidency as well. That all aim at making the the environment conducive for businesses to come in. You've been seeing our government going out here and there looking for foreign investors to come into the country. Are we in a kind of way missing the priority? Instead of making our environment conducive, we are going out looking for investors who will not come in until your environment is indeed conducive. Are we missing the priorities?
Yes, but I don't think we are missing the priority. It's what we call the twins method approach. In one hand, building infrastructure. In the second hand, you're saying investors should come. Sometimes these investors will even see value to come and build the infrastructure themselves, establish this company themselves. Then at that time, the government also need to begin to take a bite of their revenue, especially in terms of taxes. A lot of companies want to really come to Nigeria. I mean, from what I've gathered, from what the president have said, from what some of the ministers have always said. But the challenge is in terms of the business climate, like you said, and infrastructure. And that's why we keep advocating for PPP, public-private partnership. That is what is obtainable anywhere globally. And I think the government also should start looking at that as a point in how they can address the current challenges that they are having. So for me, I personally think that the government should look at how they could address those challenges in terms of PPP, then getting a lot of Nigerians to also get involved also in some of these products. So it's not just about, you want the investors to come. Yes, you can't say, okay, you want to build your infrastructure first, then you bring in the investors. No, sometimes when these investors come, they look at your market, they in turn will say, okay, we will build the infrastructure, we will operate it, we will establish our company. They want to take complete ownership, and that also will grow their expansion, reduce their tax burden, and then grow their companies also. And then the snowball effect is that they will employ more Nigerians. So I think the approach that the government is using at the moment is one of the best. You are trying to attract investors, and you're also not just sitting down there and say, investors come in. When you come in, then you can build the infrastructure. They are telling investors, you can come into the country, look at what we are doing. We are building infrastructure, we are improving our power, we are improving ease of doing business. We are trying to put legislation in place so that you can strive. We are creating a two-way exchange system. All these are what investors really need. And I think the approach is not bad. It's just that a lot of effort needs to be put in.
Indeed, it's not bad, like you said, but more still need to be done in terms of effort from the government at all levels. I've always said that. But let's also talk about the issues around the contracts between the citizen and, of course, the people. Is part of what IMF did pointed out to. There's more like a disconnect. This lack of trust between the people. Of course, the people don't really trust the government to, alleviate their sufferings. It's part of what IMF is calling the government attention to. What do you think can be done in this regard to rebuild this broken trust between government and the people?
The political class should be more moderate. That's just what it's also, because you can't be seen in a land where there seems to be not much, and then you see a certain class of people, your political appointees, they are living very large, driving the best of cars. It's very extravagant with wealth, and yet you are there, so you won't trust them. So I think the problem is the political class need to be moderate. And again, I like what you just said, all spheres of government, because what we see in Nigeria is that we are so concentrating in the center. We're also looking at the president. Even the road in front of your house, you think it's the president that is supposed to do it. So that's cause for education. Because since this president came to power, we've seen that a lot of funding has gone to the 3 tiers of government, both the local government and the state. But when you look at investment, you look at infrastructure, you look at what they have done, it's not commensurate with what they have collected from the federal allocation since this president came to power. So there's a lot. I think education also is key to preach that trust, that distrust within there. When they're educated, you are educated, you know that, look, this challenge is not just about the government. You have the local government, you also have the state government, you also have separation of power between the state, the federal, and the local government. All these will now begin to say, wow, let's see. Then you begin to hold people accountable. And that the government, you have to give it to President Tinubu, if able to get that judgment from the Supreme Court that say local government autonomy. So we should now start asking our local government chairman, with this you have collected from the Federation account, what did you do with it? What are the projects that you want to embark upon? What are you doing? Okay, in that your budget for this year, we saw that XYZ project was listed, but work has not commenced on it. Why? So the people need to be involved, and it's through education. So when you educate the people get involved and see in some states what government has been able to do with the scarce resources that come their way. I heard the former minister Rotimi Amechi saying something when he visited Abia State. He was asking the governor, where did you get all this money from? Because we are made to understand that Abia State has no money. So those are the type of things. Then that will begin to build trust within you when you begin to say, okay, based on what have come in, we have prudently been able to manage it. I think for me, that is what we need to do.
Indeed, that's what we need to do. Finally, now, as we begin to wrap up this conversation now, IMF is also calling for a stronger public financial management. In other words, we need to do more in the area of fighting corruption. How much effort do you think we're putting in place so far in the last almost 2 years now of this government?
Corruption itself, I think we've not done well. Let's be sincere with ourselves. Somebody was asking, I think a newspaper was asking just yesterday, 15 months after, what has happened to Betty Edu scandal. We've not heard anything from the government. What has happened to the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs was also accused of embezzling money. What has happened to it? So what we see is that these days governors are even just of recent, the former governor of Delta State, Okowa, now moved to APC. And remember that he was under also investigation of corruptly enriching himself with Delta State money. I'm sure by now that he has moved to the ruling party, these sins are forgiven. You will not hear anything about it any longer. So corruption in itself is becoming a charade, as far as I'm concerned. What we see the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission do, we see them sentenced for Yahoo boys. That seems to be one of their achievements these days, so that they are going after those that are eating our common. I'm not saying that getting those crime, because they also have a way of destroying our image globally, but also internally. We've seen a lot of corruption going on. But up to this moment, nobody have been. Even when they are charged to court, you see a lot of technicality, a lot of shoddy work by AFCC for them not to be converted because of. So there's still a lot of work to be done in the area of corruption. And the challenge with corruption is that as long as we keep on building strong men, we will not achieve those results. We need to begin to think of getting a strong institution, making the EFCC very, very strong to be able to handle corruption and be free from political interference. No matter how they say, no matter how the president says that, oh, look, I'm not involved, I don't intervene in what the EFCC is doing, people will begin to ask questions. Then why is it some of people that are close to you, some people that in your ruling party, they are not being charged? Are you saying all of them are sent, none of them have stolen anything? Right. So those are the challenges that we need to deal with.
All right. I hope that the federal government will address some of these challenges so that we can reverse this doomsday that the World Bank has predicted for Nigeria. I must thank you for your time, Muktar Mohammed, CEO, Finance with Muktar. Thank you for your time talking to us all the way from Lagos.
Thank you, Yusuf. My pleasure always. Thank you.
So with that is a wrap on the show today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Yusuf Akogu.